are one, so we share everything, most everything. Today, it was my honor and my privilege to welcome this beautiful woman, this longtime friend of Unity Kitchener, and to introduce you to her and what she is bringing us today. Mel is going to share the reflections on being and working in community over the past 25 years and a few things that they wish they had understood sooner. Mel is a wild, creative, interfaith spiritual director, licensed celebrant, mediator, yoga therapist, and skilled embodiment facilitator. She's a crafter of words, speaker, facilitator of workshops, ceremony, individual and group experiences to explore our inner terrain and to explore our consciousness, our shadow selves, and our values. This exploration is done with the focus on cultivating conscious awareness, healing, nurturing the heart-mind connection, and to become aware of our ways of being and feeling. Through the art of listening, sharing, co-creating, art, nature, ceremony, poetry, prayer, breath, movement, mediation, and other, or is that meditation, and other embodied, and mediation. She does that too. She's a woman of many, many, many skills. And she is really here to help us embody tools and invite us back into ourselves, back into consent, community, and connection. So thank you so much, Mel. Thank you for accepting our invitation and for inviting us into this talk. Welcome, Mel.
Are we recording?
Yes.
This meeting is being recorded.
In progress.
Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. It's good to see you. This morning, I wanted to take time after a conversation with Cheryl to invite you into your own reflection, to consider your own relationship with the collective. And I said I would offer 5 lessons. And as this came together, it was tough to choose the lessons. And then I became more aware that that was the first lesson, is that our experiences are meant to be reflected on by us, to understand ourselves, and then to understand ourselves in relationship to the collective. And so this talk is a lot more about my own dialogues with coworkers, with friends, with community members that I've worked with over the years. And my question to them was, what has being in intentional community, organizations, congregations, what has that taught you? And I listened, and it was incredible. And so I want to orientate myself this morning to say, I am simply bringing my reflections in the hope that it opens you to your reflections. That is the point, is that it isn't about any one thing at all. And a sort of opening of the understanding that oneness is different from one thing. Oneness is room for all of us to have had an experience, and powerful spaces, dynamic spaces that can actually meet us and grow us. Invite the difference into the space, invite a variety of experiences into the space. So there isn't a right or wrong of your learnings this morning. There is simply a reflection of what being a part of the collection has taught you. So I'm not speaking universal truths, and I am speaking from my own experiences in relationship with congregation and organizations, both personally and professionally. The key piece I want to highlight here is we are never absolved from doing our own translation work, meaning we are meant to inquire, reflect, to ask ourselves why something I say this morning may bristle you, and I hope it does. or why I might say something that gives you a response of feeling maybe deeply seen and heard. This inquiry gives us insight into our own story. This insight is vital. And yet, as Brene Brown says, we will oftentimes avoid doing this because to do this will cause us a certain level of pain. And beyond that pain, I assure you there is power. But first, it calls us to look upon ourselves in some deep and meaningful ways. And so after the service today, in our time where we come together and talk, that will be my curiosity. My question to you will be, what has your experiences in intentional spaces, organization, congregation, what has that taught you? And perhaps I would challenge even deeply further, why is my relationship with the collective? Not do I have one, you have one. Why is it as it is? And what is it teaching me? Lesson 2. Beyond this invitation of and responsibility we have to do our own work and our own reflection, I underestimated being prepared to practice leaning into discomfort. Wayne Teasdale in the book Mystic Heart says, it is not what we do, it is how well and fast we can integrate with what is. This has meant then for me that the feelings of comfort, the feelings of connection, the feelings of being a part of and being one with have in some ways slowed my overall growth. It has been when I have equally been able to lean into those spaces of connection and belonging while holding the apparent polar of disconnection, discomfort, and looking at all of it and finding that that space, my own ability to hold that seeming polarity, meant that I could grow the space for which I could meet myself and the many aspects of me and what was coming up. And it also meant that I was more capable of meeting another. So many times we want to resist what is. We want to say, this can't be. I can't be just looking out for myself right now, if we dared to look in. Or it can't be that this world is the way that it is in this way. And oftentimes it's been leaning into, okay, so what if that were just what it is right now? What else could I see? And it is in the leaning in to the discomfort that more and more space has opened for reflection, for understanding, for connection, for community, paradoxically, by leaning into the discomfort. I've learned also about collective mindset and that it is the practice. Collective consciousness, the first piece that I would sort of detail or break down within this collective mindset as the practice, or thinking collectively as the practice, is the first one, which I think I've articulated already in point 1 and 2, which is mind your business. That is to say that when something's bothering me or someone is bothering me, I tend to look in now to say, what is that really about for me? And I tend to seek to feel into that. In my work, there's a quote that says, if we all agree, we are not all necessary. This idea of coming together in perfect harmony without seeing that harmony is disharmony and melody and all these other notes of creation means that we cannot necessarily grow in the ways that we would like to. But it takes a certain responsibility to look within myself and say, okay, so what are you pushing on there? Okay, well, then how do we hold this? How do we hold this tension between these two seeming competing needs to see that they are both existing, both present? Now, how do we meet one another and ourselves? Secondly, is remember that in a collective is a group of individuals working together toward a common goal. In this context, perhaps it's deepening understanding of spirituality through the path of unity. That means then that we check in frequently with one another and ourselves and revisit the goal to ensure that there's shared understanding and that we aren't off our collective mandate. This means then that each person contributes to the group's success and that each person is meant to teach you And I promise you this, you will not always like the experience. You weren't meant to. That experiences of working with other people towards a shared common goal and being stretched into the tension of what that means is where the growth is. This next one is key. Community, a sense of belonging, a sense of deep connection, perhaps even friendship, may or may not result. And that is okay. The hardest reverse lesson was for me to realize that there was no way that I could have meaningful, deep relationships with every single person. So I came instead to really appreciate the different textures and layers and connection points, some for a moment, some who I would come to understand differently over years and years, and some who have been constant. I have looked into their eyes over and over again, and we have met the hard stuff together, and that has been completely and utterly intimacy building and growth promoting. We've also shared joy together in community. Releasing this idea that community will be the result has meant that I am able to participate with the collective mindset at the forefront. What is the goal? What about now? It means that meetings I'm in now have a question at the beginning to ensure that there's shared understanding about what this meeting is about today, so that we can share and focus in on that goal and meet the needs of one another and the people in this room. So many times we seek to meet the needs of the people not in the room, and we don't look at the people right in front of us. By staying connected to the collective goal, it invites us both inward and outward at the same time, and it's a practice. From the place of collective consciousness, there becomes room for each of us to be seen and valued for contributions and brilliance, because care has been taken to create a dynamic space. And dynamic spaces are different. They are a rooted space for which varieties can exist, because there has been a valuing on that. And there has been the work done to create more space for us to be uncomfortable, look at our own stuff, hold it, and take responsibility. In these spaces, similar to healthy roots, these are the spaces for which naturally diversity blooms. Naturally, a variety of people can show up. And they can show up because it's a dynamic space. But dynamic space is because there is a concentration of dynamic people in that space. People who can have their own opinion, understand who they are, where they're at, they can set boundaries, they can celebrate, and they can hold room for another to do the same, even if it doesn't look the same. My favorite line of this whole talk was this next lesson, because it's the most frustrating. Be prepared to plan and or celebrate parties that you would not want to attend. I'll say that again. Be prepared to plan and or celebrate parties that you would not want to attend. This one hit me the most because we want so much to belong, to be a part of. And that's how quickly our own needs can go ahead of the common goal. It has been profoundly powerful in my work to create ceremony and celebration that does not reflect me or what I would want, perhaps on my day of union, perhaps on my celebration of life, perhaps on my deathbed. But there has been something profound about meeting people where they're at with their wants. And I've shared this story in other spaces and places before, but it's one of my favorites. When I was sitting more bedside to those meeting the end of this life, their human body, I was asked once, and I offered and made it a really key practice of mine to learn to pray in as many languages as there were people in front of me, to want to meet people where they are, because the goal for me was to be present with them in what they were experiencing. That was it, to be present with the person in front of me and what they were experiencing. And so I asked, is there anything I could offer right now to bring you comfort? And this beautiful soul sat in front of me and picked up what is called a Unitunes chalice book and said, I want you to sing The House of the Rising Sun. And there was 20, for context, there's about 20 people in the kitchen next door. There's me trying to think about how I'm going to pull off singing House of the Rising Sun. Do I even know the words? And I suggested maybe we play a version of it. And they said again, no, just you sing it. And so there I was singing House of the Rising Sun. And I thought, what a gift this is to be turning out House of the Rising Sun for someone in only the goal, which was to be present. It wasn't about how well I sang. It wasn't if I hit every note. It was, can I be present with you? I want that. So can I do that? And how challenging it is to do that. To be witnessed is sacred and rare. I never thought that there would be something beyond this idea of empathy. And it has been exciting and a well of depth to differentiate the understanding of empathy and witness. And I would suggest that witness is sacred and rare. So empathy is if we can get to the point where we connect on a shared experience. This is feeling for, feeling with type energy. It's its own practice because oftentimes we will move to our own feelings about things rather than staying with and identifying with another. And oftentimes we get there with another because we have experienced something similar. What I've learned in my own life over the last 3 years intensely is the power of being witnessed. And I would articulate being witnessed this way. It is connection beyond shared experience. It says, I see you and you are here, and therefore I am listening. It is present for whatever feelings are coming up for someone else or whatever experience, without becoming anything as a result. This is especially powerful because oftentimes, I've said before, we will slow play our truths with others. We will wait to see who is in front of us and we will wait to see what they can hold. And those of us that seek to cultivate our capacity to witness, we grow our ability to sit with discomfort. We are incredibly committed to doing our own work, to knowing who we are, so that we can actively see when something is coming up and choose to set it aside to look at later if we are choosing to be present with another. And these moments where we can be really present with another, even if the experience is vastly different than ours, and we hold a texture of curiosity, of openness, of desire to understand, to learn, to grow. That texture of openness is enough. It is the most powerful sensation, in part because I would suggest that love is the space to actually be and be with what you are being with and be seen in that, rather than the fixing, rescuing, advice giving, the rose-colored glasses-ing, the silver lining-ing, but rather just to be with another in whatever it is they're in that moment, so that they are witnessed and that they experience what not alone feels like. It's particularly powerful when somebody can witness you and they don't have a point of reference of sameness. Again, that's back to this idea of oneness is different than one thing, but to be celebrated and seen, to be held and cared about in whatever it is you are in. The last thing about that texture and difference of witness is we get one another because we know we are connected. Love and understanding through embodiment of shared humanity. In short, I would say that this idea of widening our circle beyond discomfort is expansion, possibility, new learning, and growth. And I just said earlier this week, really honestly, I'm struggling to market why anyone would want to work on themselves, because this is hard stuff. This is rough stuff. We come to see the aspects of ourselves that are wounded, that still require growth, and then we're called into seeing, loving, and holding and caring about those in a world that has told us to disconnect. And I would say beyond discomfort is expansion, possibility, new learning, growth, and I would add profound inner peace. Peace that allows me to see and feel my center in almost anything. My boundaries then become, as I've heard quoted before, my boundaries are the space where I can love you and love me simultaneously. So I learn how to know me more, how to meet myself more so I can meet others, and also figure out what distance makes sense to hold center my ability to love myself and you at the same time. This openness affords us the ability to see something beyond ourselves, into the honor to bear witness, to see ourselves as part of a bigger picture, and to embrace the variety within ourselves and around us. And in Buddhism, there's this deep understanding of inside, outside, same. And I would say, to the degree we dismiss ourselves, we will dismiss one another. And this is another motivation for doing the work of meeting ourselves. About 7 years ago now, I shared a video on starling mermations. And this video was a reflection on community. And I'm going to actually stop sharing for a moment and invite you into what I hope is a deeper reflection of yourself. And then I'm going to close by showing you, ideally, a video of the starling mermations. So about seven years ago now, I shared this for the first time, and now I'm sharing it again with deeper understanding. So the mystery of the starling murmuration. These birds move through the sky, and it is positively magnificent. They're matching their movements to the closest 6 to 7 birds, and they are at choice of who those birds are. They ripple affect their reach because those birds also move then in unison with other circles. This is a key piece. It is not just matching your movements to those 6 or 7 birds, but it's understanding that you are also a part of these other circles and that we impact one another. Each part of this collective of 6 and 7 birds then is a part of other circles that are a part of other circles, and so on. They are vital, each bird. They model the valuing of the collective and continue to see that they're a part of the collective. They model the value of the collective while continuing to see they are a part of the collective. I never understood how deep that practice would take me. They challenge the idea that they're not making an impact because they embrace that they are there. And in that, they are making a difference through existing. Once this debate is settled, they move on to more curious things like the question of Peter Block from Communities of Belonging. He asked this: is the story I'm living the one that wants to be lived in me? There are hundreds, sometimes thousands of starlings that gather this way. This makes so many circles, and the circles are not competing. This isn't about one circle or many circles. It's about the collective movement. They gather just as we long to communicate, to feel the warmth of connection and protect themselves from harm. I would suggest, in the context of spiritual community, perhaps it is that we gather to heal from the mental anguish of ideas like separate, other, or that there would be one path at all in a world that shows us every single day the infinite ways that love takes shape and form. These birds don't spend their time critiquing the other circles, but rather in delighting in what happens when they come together. In this way, some of us will come to spiritual work through practical practices, seeking to put into action what we can offer now. Others will come compelled by the heart, drawn in by the desire to feel more, to understand this emotional ocean that is themselves, perhaps through a myriad of art, through the art of connection and making and creating. Others still will be drawn by the intellectual possibilities, seeking to learn and understand and contemplate. And of course, all of us come for all of these things. Yet so quickly we can value certain ways of arriving over others, certain ways of being or contributing or connecting over others. In the collective and the functioning of circles, we grow profoundly aware that we, each of us, holds an aspect of truth, vital to the collective, and none of us holds all of it. 7 years later, since the first time I spoke on murmurations, I offer my least poetic but most felt lesson to date. It was gifted to me by a congregant who is also a scientist focused on animal behavior. They, after I spoke, shared this vital piece of wisdom. Mel, you know starlings are jerks, right? Like of all the birds, they tend to be most jerkish. And I appreciated that this scientist didn't use very scientific words, that jerkish could be the word, and I could understand what that meant. And I didn't know that. I saw the beauty of what these starlings create, but I hadn't considered that they were one of the most jerkish of all the birds. I think in many ways I'd wanted to dodge my own ability to be a jerk. Yet, as I've reflected over the years with intentional focus to know myself deeply, it has been the ownership of my quote, jerk side that has afforded me the most softening, the most growth, the most gentleness, an increased sense of humor, and a keen capacity to witness not only myself, but others, to simply be present with whatever is actually there. Sometimes the things I thought were most awful about me, shameful, came to be the greatest assets or most beautiful parts of me. And other times I can say that I simply became aware faster that I was being a jerk and adjust without going into a shame spiral or making it more about me. Much like the way the murmuration will sharply switch directions. These transitions feel more like growth than sadness these days. These change become part of an understanding and acceptance. When another shares their jerk side with me, I tend to have capacity now to simply witness, to see them in their struggle, remind them of their magnificence, and other times to see someone in magnificence who has forgotten that they have a jerk side and gently remind them. I never anticipated the freedom and healing that would come from making room for it all. The circles keep getting wider, the connections keep growing. And in that, the concept of shared humanity turns into a practice that is truly infinite.